Why, hello there, everyone. Welcome back to another rousing story time with Jack. You might be wondering why this episode took so much longer than all the others to make, and well, that's simply because I both hit something of a creative barrier, as well as I've been building on this background you've been seeing behind me. This is the inner workings, the guts, if you will, of the game that I plan to be making on 2B2T rather shortly. However, the planning phase has taken a lot more time and is a much more complicated process than I imagined. So it may take a little while longer before you all see episode 6 after this one is finished. But without any further ado, as with all of my Storytime episodes, these all take place one after another, the greater purpose of which is to illustrate an overall pattern of behaviors and intention, all of which will lead up to the culmination of Space Valkyria 2,
Wow.
and then Space Valkyria 3.
Wow.
So strap in and let's rocket ourselves back to 2014. Back at the time of the clone dupe, another more secretive event had also been going on concurrently. In the middle of 2013, almost a year after the original End Dimension had been deleted, Housemaster decided to reopen the End Dimension once more. Only, he'd not restored the original End Dimension, but created a new one in its place. This led me to check up on an old End Portal that I'd once had secret access to. One that had been created by the players, Predator and Cream of the Slop, who were both close allies of Pop Bob from the Reign of Terror backdoor plugin. However, they were also soon betrayed by Pop Bob and their entire base destroyed. But by lucky chance, the end portal they'd had squirreled away in a wall was left unscathed. The last time I'd used this end portal was in late 2012 when I attempted to return to that very end base I'd been kicked out of by Housemaster. This lack of end access was my reason for journeying out to found the lands. However, the location of that secret end portal never quite left my mind. For when Housemaster reopened the end, he created 3 new end portals all around spawn. He'd not accounted for that 4th secret end portal that was in my possession. And I was soon to make use of it and cause a little bit of mischief at the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. All while Zarviar, a close friend of mine, had been experimenting with the clone dupe. We had also been utilizing the spawn teleport glitch, also known as STP, to teleport back to spawn for our own further amusement. It wouldn't be long before another member of my group, Kinarana, had gotten a brilliant idea: Operation Treasure Planet. This plan would involve destroying those public end portals at spawn, and then turn our newly deserted end spawn into a massive stash with all manner of goods and items. And it just so happened that with the advent of 1.7, a fresh new exploit capable of breaking bedrock had just become public. The exploit worked as follows. One would grow a dark oak sapling on top of a block they wished to destroy. Upon growing it forcibly with bone meal, the new tree would occupy all possible upward space that a tree could grow to. Then, after clearing out the bottommost layer of blocks and planting 4 new dark oak saplings, a certain bug at that time would prevent the oak saplings from growing fully. Instead, they would grow downward, since no available upward space existed. This in turn, using this root-like growth method, would overwrite any older blocks beneath the tree, allowing it to pierce through any material. Kinarana and I had a very simple idea: destroy all the public end portals using dark oak saplings and monopolize the end dimension for our own ends. Operation Treasure Planet was very quickly a go. And we set ourselves to work in between duplicating ourselves, as mentioned in the previous episode. Very soon, the dark oak saplings had done their dirty deeds, and dirt cheap too. However, not all would be so easy, as very quickly upon the destruction of the final public end portal, who should arrive but none other than Pop Bob himself. Upon realizing what we'd done, we knew the jig was up, and that it would only be a matter of time before Housemaster would create new end portals in their place. After all, Pop Bob had caught us red-handed attempting to strip the server of the End Dimension once more, and of course, decided to stop us. Very quickly thereafter we scattered, but not before hearing from Housemaster himself. A whole lot of us, feeling snarky and full of ourselves, began to utilize Unicode characters as a means to communicate. Unicode just being a separate style of text that one could utilize. The alphabet was the same, and was thinner and crisp and more pointed. It looked very sleek and nice. Housemaster, however, was not pleased with this, and would threaten us all with a hard mute for several days or even weeks if we didn't start talking normally. It very quickly followed that I and several other members of our group, including Zarviar, Kinorana, and Exalted Spartans, were all muted for nearly a full week. However, in those days, the server had a rather interesting plugin installed that would allow us to bypass, mostly, this hard mute. This plugin was the Party Chat plugin, which any group members within the party could freely converse using the /p command. And even though we may have been muted from general chat, we could still freely communicate with non-muted members in the party, as well as ourselves through private messages. Through this odd turn of events, this ended up making me one of the first people ever to be muted by Housemaster himself. Though it does sadden me now that there is no party chat today, as an alternative like there was back then. But very quickly, as I had suspected, new end portals were indeed created. Only these end portals were different. They were set inside bedrock itself, and had no visible portal frames flanking their edges. And even sooner than that, a newer, updated version of 1.7 was quickly released, which quashed the Dark Oak bug forever. Even so, our spirits remained resolute to carry out this plan known as Operation Treasure Planet in some form or another. And eventually, within the next year and a half, that plan would come completely to fruition on a level that I would never have been able to imagine back then. And if you're liking what you're hearing now, please do leave a like and maybe even subscribe, and of course press the notification bell, as I greatly appreciate your continued patronage. Also join the memberships to receive a written book on 2B2T from me, as well as early access to all of my videos in their uncensored versions. And if nothing else, just a comment or any sort of feedback I would greatly appreciate. And now, a short message from our sponsor, Alpha Airlines. Don't get caught up in all the airport mess happening right now. Fly on Alpha Airlines to save time and money and brain power. Stuck in a line for one of our competitors? Call Alpha Airlines at 1-800-420-6969 to get it all sorted out and booked on the Alpha Airlines flight within 5 minutes, guaranteed. Now including summer destinations to the lands, Space Valkyria 3, Mu Megabase, and of course our central hub, Spawn. Thank you for always trusting Alpha Airlines, and don't forget to leave us the best review you can on Yelp. Fly divine. Fly Alpha Airline. Call 1-800-420-6969. That's 1-800-420-6969. Now, back to the story. After a month or so into 2014, nasty waves of lag began to overrun the server, drowning us in unplayability. A previous 1.6.4 structure saving bug created the same kind of lag spikes that were almost undetectable by standard TPS meters, and it nearly killed the server. The lag this time was as swift as the crack of a whip and just as painful. And as time carried on, the lag spikes were so unbearable, so overwhelming that hope itself began to be drained from the current server. Any actions or efforts you did were immediately undone by the server, as rollback would instantly erase any action the server didn't approve of. Traveling was impossible, and so was base building. There seemed no remedy in sight. And then on March the 12th, 2014, the truly unthinkable happened. We had all logged in and found ourselves reset and stripped naked at spawn. Housemaster had done something entirely unprecedented. He had reset the entire world. I simply couldn't believe what I was seeing. Very soon, people began to develop new bases and homes on the server, though things would never quite be the same. Even the same attitudes that had previously been on display were all but relaxed. Everyone was at ease. No one took the map seriously. We weren't even sure we were going to ever return to the old map. That's how dire the situation had become. Or even to this very day, the server that you all know as the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft has never been reset once. Right? Well, this is not the end of the story of 2B2T itself, of course. And this map would in actuality only last about 2 months. And while Housemaster and everyone else helping him worked on the server's problems, whatever it really was, the rest of us continued to play normally like it was an ordinary map. During this particular map, the Nether was no longer 1 to 8, but a solid 1-to-1 parallel with the overworld, preventing any sort of far travel. It really changed the way people perceived how 2B2T demanded you live and move through it. But I didn't have my sights set on the Nether or the overworld. For you see, after a year of having the new end dimension enabled, I felt it was finally time to start trying to make an end base. While our efforts earlier to create Treasure Planet had been foiled, our hopes hadn't yet been diminished. And so we talked about doing just that, creating a Treasure Planet on the temp map. But with the lack of a Dark Oak bug, or any other bedrock breaking exploit to our knowledge, we instead settled on a far more out-of-the-way type of base. A platform, large and broad with every manner of farm on it.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
Eventually, upon deciding the place and time, we created a bridge out into the void, far away, over a kilometer, so that no one would inadvertently find it. During the process of moving animals and items to this eventual end base, a curious meeting occurred between myself and the now infamous player, Talo112. He'd hitched a ride on a minecart that had connected my base back to the mainland, and upon arriving, he quickly introduced himself. The jig was up, so all we could do was embrace him and welcome him. Talo at first seemed to be a jovial person, very kind and easy to get along with. None of us could have realized how detrimental this founding relationship would become to the overall safety of what would eventually be known as Space Valkyria. And soon after that, the establishment of the platform, as well as many friends of mine visiting, including Pyrobite, Zarviar, Kinarana, Exalted Spartans, and a few others, everyone would come and congregate during the duration of this temp map. While the map felt as though it crawled on into eternity, in truth it was only about 2 months long. And then eventually we would return to that older map, which, as you all know, we still play on to this very day. And even though much of the history of this temp map has been lost to time, as it turns out, I've recently rediscovered all of my log files that I'd cached over the years. They've been carefully preserved, allowing me to dive back in time and relive these older time periods with relative ease. In addition, further conversations with James Russells revealed the lag's source to be caused by mobs. And while that doesn't exactly seem to make a whole lot of sense on the surface, James was privy to various TPS and chunk loading reports by Housemaster himself. So the cause of the lag appears to check out. And to cap it all off, the events of 2014's temp map all culminated with an April 1st map. A 2B2T tradition by this point. The April 1st, 2014 map was a mere small 200 by 200 box, utilizing the newer world border features that had just been introduced. Very quickly, conflict arose within this small box we were all confined to. Very soon thereafter, Housemaster himself would show up, bringing with him a nasty finality to the map. A swarm of ender dragons, which quickly tore through the remains of both the map and the player base. When the nightmare was finally over, we returned to that temp map to live out the remaining month of its lifespan. That last month would eventually wind down. We would suddenly find ourselves back on the main map of 2B2T. And while the explanations given as to the source of all the lag that had exiled us in the first place are rather shaky, it nonetheless happened and was now behind us. I was even eventually told by Pyrobite to not worry about it and not dig too deep into it. Rather fishy, if you ask me. And so, upon returning to the main world, I resolved myself to revisit Valkyria one last time. There, in secret, I would live, slowly rebuilding and rejuvenating the base. All would not be well for long, as a new threat would slowly creep onto the horizon, the threats of both Javazan and Ormonger. But that's all another tale for another day. If you've enjoyed your time together here with me, I'd like to thank you for giving me that time of yours, as I know your time is quite valuable. I would also urge you to join our membership so that you can see these videos in their purest and unfiltered form. But if not, just a little bit of engagement would do. In addition, I'd like to ask you to join our Discord server or follow me on Twitter, or just simply subscribe, whichever you prefer, as big numbers going up is my lifeblood. And soon enough, I shall relay to you all the tales of Ormonger and his insane downfall. So stay tuned and come back next time for more story time with Jack. And now I would just like to thank all the members who have helped support me over this last year. Amion, Orsond, Pale Blue Zebra, Glubtubies, Holmesy85, Frenzy, Air1, Space, and Whackback. Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate you all very greatly.